So today I'm going to be talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So for those of you who don't know, she won against Joe Crowley in the 14th New York Congressional District in the Democratic primary. And the thing I want to go over is what she represents in a bit of the ideology behind her. Not so much go after her or a specific interview, as I want to focus more on the broader spectrum aspects. So for context, I like having it just going over a few data points. Unemployment in the district is 9.1. Median household income is just under $47,000. High school graduation is at 74.7%. College graduation is at 24.6%. And just to compare it to some of the surrounding New York districts, and compare it to the U.S. as a whole, just to go over Cortez herself, she's a self-proclaimed democratic socialist. She's 28. I think she's Puerto Rican, of Puerto Rican descent, but otherwise nothing else really matters. So as for the actual election itself, you can see there's not much to it. She won by about 4,000 votes. Also, Joe Crowley is the typical Democrat. I mean, he has the normal, there's a gun problem, increased spending on stuff like education. He obviously supports Obamacare. He wants the legalization of 11 million illegal immigrants. So that's all pretty normal Democratic Party stuff. When we move over to Cortez, on the other hand, she supports kind of those pseudo-socialist Marxist policies that a lot of young people tend to follow. She wants to abolish ICE, believes Medicare for all. Housing is a human right. That one's a bit on the weird side. And $50 minimum wage with federal job guarantees. So, I mean, lots of places are instituting $50 minimum wages, but this means that she wants like across the board $15 minimum wage, obviously. She wants to mobilize against climate change. That's probably, in my opinion, the most normal democratic thing that she instituted in her policies. And then she just weirdly wants justice system reform. She just kind of voiced that and had a bunch of policies that were in the process of being reviewed. But I mean, they didn't really seem anything special. Now going over after a lot of that stuff, you can kind of see the clear divide between the two, with Joe Crowley represents kind of the mainstream kind of Democrat liberal policies, where Cortez represents that blind extreme, right? Just following these policies because they feel good, right? Right, you can watch a few of the interviews. I encourage people to watch it. I watched a few of them myself. She's basically spreading that same socialist paradise lie, right? An aspect that Bernie Sanders does. It's the same thing, right? They try to vilify somebody so that people can kind of come together, right? The example being the 1%. They're vilifying people who don't really deserve to be vilified, because a lot of the people who make money and a lot of the people who are in the 1% are there because they've spent their life getting there, right? If I work, I don't know, 60 hours a week as a lawyer, what did I do to the people who don't have any money? So the thing is they vilify the 1% so that people have something to hate in society. It's kind of part of this kind of socialist ideas, where if one person is starving, it's better if everybody is starving as well, so that there's no inequality, right? They care more about equality regardless of the outcome of the equality. So if their outcome is everybody is starving, it's better that everybody is starving, right? Obviously, that's not what they want. But the problem is that the underlying principles of a lot of the policies and the next step policies is that everybody is starving, right? It's very easy to look at a timeline of Venezuela China, the Soviet Union, a lot of these socialist countries, that they took the steps, these initial steps, then they took it a step further, then they took it to the next step, and then lo and behold, everybody's eating dogs. These pseudo-socialist policies are more feel-good politics, because it feels good to say that you want Medicare for all. But on the other hand, where you're saying you want people to be personally responsible for their decisions, doesn't feel that good. So the last things to talk about is what does she represent? Right? What does she represent? And she represents the millennials who just support blindly these feel-good politics. A lot of people today are not growing up with the same sentiment towards socialism that a lot of people before had, right? Because growing up in the 70s, the 60s, right, 80s even, right, a lot of the socialist sentiment was there, right? The socialist threat was real. But today, right, people didn't even know that Venezuela was happening, right, until John Oliver did a piece on it. And some of my friends who are Venezuelan, they said he did do it justice, right? He covered really well, but the problem about it is that he's going, look at all these brilliant policies that Chavez implemented. We should do that here, right? That's the whole idea of it, right? It doesn't matter that people are eating dogs in the streets. So the thing is about future generations, people who are younger, people who are 15 nowadays, or people who are 12 or 13, and who are seeing Trump get elected and all these new kind of cultural Marxist movements happening. There's a good chance that a lot of these percentages might be higher, right? I just pulled an article. I tried finding the original survey from the University of Chicago's Gen Forward, but I couldn't find it. I went through probably 6-7 pages, and none of them were the right ones, but I'm sure these numbers are probably about right. They sound about right. So it said that basically millennials, 62% of them think that we need a strong government to handle today's complex economic problems. So this was probably just a survey where it had a question, do you agree, disagree, and 62% of them agreed, versus 35% agreed on the other hand, right? But the funny thing is that 50% hold a favorable opinion of capitalism. 45% have a positive view of socialism. 45% have a positive view of socialism. The next point that he made was that 26% of baby boomers would prefer to live in a socialist society, and among young people that figure was 44%. So again, right, people my age, 44% would rather eat dogs. The final question is, does she represent a new movement? And you kind of have to look at Bernie Sanders, where after he lost, did he represent a new movement? And my answer would probably be no, because they just represent the kind of misled ideology, right? This kind of guise that they use, right? They direct everybody's hate towards the 1%. They have democratic in front of socialism, right? But it doesn't matter whether or not you elect people democratically, it's still socialism. It's kind of a cliche, but a lot of young people, they make logical decisions with emotional appeal. And a lot of people my age, millennials, that's what kind of scared me into talking about her, is because seeing somebody like her beat out pretty much an establishment Democrat, right? Somebody like Joe Crowley, it's okay, whatever. He's just a Democrat. But somebody like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's promoting a lot of this stuff, it just comes out to being overly emotional, right? You can see it with the Me Too movement. You can see it with the punching Nazis, right? In the Me Too movement, right? People, it was guilty because accused. It was not let's hold off a second. From the beginning, it was like, when I saw that, I was like, this can be scary, right? Ruining people's lives with accusations. Right. The problem in America that's growing is not people's growing sentiment for socialism. I truly don't think that people are believing in socialism, right? They're not wanting to pull the Bolshevik Revolution and overthrow the government, right? They're not ready to throw and kill up to 60 million people in these concentration camps, basically. People are unable to think for themselves. People are unwilling to open themselves up to new questions and to new ideologies, and to ask questions that aren't even relative to what they think, right? To try and think from the other side, or try and think from different points of views, or to try and ask questions that nobody asks, right? That is what is rampant among millennials today. And the problem that we need to fix, and I want to fix here, is that I want to encourage people to think for themselves and to understand and ask the questions that nobody else asks.